Hello. Looks like we've already got some folks already on the chat. So welcome out, guys. Gary and Bob and Carl, welcome out. Um, we wanted to start tonight um, with some crazy news stories coming out, and they are predicting that this summer is going to be hotter than normal and that we're going to have El Nino conditions this year. So I wanted to start out our show as you guys are hopping on with that. So I've got a story up here from azcentral.com. So shout out to those guys. That's who wrote this article, and we'll get the chat up here in just a moment. But it says scientists are predicting that El Nino conditions are likely to develop this year. Forecasters put the chances at 55% for a strong cycle, bringing the potential for severe weather, higher temperatures, and the chance of flooding in Arizona and across the globe. And so it goes through more about what exactly El Nino is. And ultimately, I think the moral of the story is we're in for a very hot summer here in the United States. I think we're going to see maybe even some record temperatures. It says earlier this month, the NOAA's Climate Prediction Center found that global ocean temperatures reached record highs in April of 2023 at 1.55 degrees Fahrenheit above the average from 1982 to 2011. This marked the second highest monthly ocean temperature for any month on record, just 0.02 of a degree shy of the record warm ocean temperature set in January 2016 during the last El Nino. So I think we're going to see a pretty hot summer here. And I got to tell you, Griffin Air, we've had a hard time finding good help. So we're going to probably be limping through this summer. And, the labor shortages that began during the pandemic and have just continued, we haven't bounced back from that as far as finding good folks. I've got some good guys, but we're smaller than we used to be. Let's put it that way. So let's see if there's anything else we want to touch on here. The WMO predicts that there is a 98% likelihood that at least one of the next 5 years, as well as the 5-year period, will be the warmest on record. So that's saying something. Extreme El Nino and La Nina events may increase in frequency from about one every 20 years to one every 10 years by the end of the 21st century under aggressive greenhouse gas emission scenarios. So yeah, I think ultimately the moral of the story is we're in for a hot summer this year. And so and they're usually not wrong on that. So we've had some warm warm years here in the last, decade, I guess. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out and all the warmth there. So let's see. Welcome, Steve. Again, we've got Bob, Carl, Gary, and then welcome, Gil. So yeah, if you guys are on here, feel free to throw a question. Looks like we've got some other pros on here with us tonight as well, and we will try to get your heating and air questions answered. I don't know everything, especially when it comes to more commercial type stuff. I've been always focused more on residential. Griffin Air mostly only does residential, and we do have a few commercial customers, but nothing crazy. We don't. I used to, in a former life, do I had a customer with a cooling tower and things like that, and we don't mess with any of that at Griffin Air. So hey, TJ, Jesse, and Ryan. But yeah, so if you have any questions, also you guys that are hopping on, if you've never hopped on with us before, please share where you're located. We always like to see where you guys are coming to us at. And I get folks that comment on our normal YouTube videos from other countries, and we've even had folks subscribe to our website a few times, but I don't know that we've had anybody on our lives yet from other countries. So it'll be kind of cool if that ever happens. So please share where you're located. We always like to see that. And Jesse says, hey, welcome, Jesse. Carl says, we get monsoons here, usually starting mid-June. We already have had some monsoonal rains. Crazy, crazy. Western Massachusetts, nice. Texas. What part of Texas are you in, Gil? So yeah, I've got a few stories I was going to tell you guys tonight, but I wanted to start out with that El Nino. I think we're going to have a really hot summer, and some of you guys that are already in hot states, Jesse's in New York, Mark is in PE. I'm not sure where that's at. If you could elaborate, I don't know the acronym. And then Steve's in Louisville, Kentucky. Nice. I love Louisville. I've been there several times years ago, but I always thought Louisville was, in comparison to a lot of other cities, I always thought it was pretty clean there, at least where we would always go. It was just a nice place to visit. So it's getting hot here and humidity hasn't hit yet. Yeah. In Virginia today, it was only, I think it was like a high of 74, maybe 73. And it was really windy at times. So it was almost kind of felt like, I think I put a jacket on this evening when I was meeting with a few folks. So 1.5 hours north of Phoenix. I'm sure it's warm there. North Texas, nice mild spring here in North Carolina. Yeah, I think it's coming, Ryan. The heat's right around the corner. So, but yeah, so we had a crazy week this past week. Hey, Mark's in Pennsylvania. Gotcha. And my office manager at Griffin Air, I don't want to share anything that is personal if she doesn't want me to share too much, but let's just say she had a real bad accident, and she, I guess, was out late at night and had taken a fall and fell on a piece of farm equipment, and she had like stab wounds. Like the pictures look like someone had actually, like she was a victim of a crime kind of thing. I mean, it was just crazy. And then she also broke her arm real bad. So it's just been crazy because I've been filling back in and answering phones and doing some things I haven't done in a while. But it's just been a crazy week so far. So yeah. Let's see. And I also wanted to shout out, I assume, my buddy Steve here locally. There's Steve that joins us every week, everything HVACR. And then there's my buddy Steve. He told me he was going to be on tonight. And so shout out to Mr. Harris if he's seeing this. He's always been a really good friend, and he when I was growing Griffin Air, he's helped me with a few things, showing me a few things. He's owned a business a whole lot longer than I have, and so it was nice. It's always been nice getting that mentorship from guys that have been doing it a whole lot longer. So shout out to Steve. All right. Let's see. If you are joining us, feel free to drop any questions you might have in the comment section, live chat, and we will try to get those answered. Emery, hello to Emery. I see you joined us here. And yeah, so we'll get those answered. In the meantime, while we're waiting for some questions to pop in here, I'm gonna cut to one of our segments that we have been cutting to from time to time. And this week I know we talked about a fake invention or a crazy invention, and I wanted to start out tonight with another one of those. I remember a couple weeks ago we talked about making ductwork out of more like plastic materials that will not rust, things like that. And this week, the invention that I was going to throw out there, first of all, if you have an invention or something that you think should be offered or being done in the heating and air industry that's not, please comment that. I'd love to hear your crazy inventions. But the one I was going to raise tonight is, a lot of folks are doing these geothermal systems and they have to do all these crazy things like digging wells and putting all these loops in the ground and so on. And I know this wouldn't work for smaller houses, but for a lot of these bigger houses, one thing I've always thought of or considered when they are grading and they're doing all the things they do when they're building a house, they're clearing the land and they do the land grading, and of course they dig footers and things like that. And I almost think that they should include, especially when they're digging and pouring the footers, go ahead and throw your loops in for your geothermal. Maybe this is a horrible invention. I don't do enough geothermal to know whether it is or is not a good invention, but I've just always thought, when they dig those footers, go ahead and drop your loops in as well, and then have them sticking out of the ground, just like you would rough in the plumbing, and come back later, and your loops are already buried, and you could install your geothermal system. So tonight, my invention is footer poured geothermal loops. That's going to be my hypothetical invention that I'm going to throw out there. And so let me know your thoughts on that in the chat section. I'd love to hear it. Let's see. Ryan says, Gary, you are right. Haven't heard of that town outside of Gastonia. Emery says, the humidity is awful here. Gary says, I am thinking about getting MHK2 thermostats for my Mitsubishi split system. Are they communicating? I know they are wireless. Let me know. Thanks. I'm not familiar with those, Gary, but let me see if I can answer your question just with a quick search here. MHK2. So these look very similar to the T series made by Honeywell, and it's very possible that they're just rebranded T6s because that's what they're looking like. So I don't think that they are going to be communicating technology. And a lot of these thermostats that have the capability of connecting to of these mini splits and things like that, they are actually not communicating technology. They operate very similar to how the remote control does, where the remote control is not actually communicating. You're just telling the system, hey, I want it to be this temperature. I want it to be, this mode and so on. But then the system itself might be communicating between the indoor and outdoor units, but there's nothing communicating back and forth with the remote control. And that's how a lot of these thermostats that control these mini splits operate. Now, I have not personally used this MHK2 thermostat, but I'd be surprised if I'm wrong on that. I would bet that it is very similar to the T series. It almost looks like it's made by Honeywell, and it probably may have even replaced the Honeywell D6 that Honeywell did away with, that you were able to pair with a lot of mini splits. So again, I haven't laid hands on this one, especially ever since we switched to, we've been doing Daikin for a whole bunch of years now. We used to do Mitsubishi years ago. So let's see. Ryan says, Mikey Pipes talked about switching the mini splits he installs from Fujitsu to Daikin today. You might have another Daikin installed in the YouTube community. The brand is definitely growing. Yeah, they're already the biggest here in the US. I haven't heard though, because I heard somebody say that so years ago it used to be Carrier was the biggest, right? A handful of years ago, and then Daikin passed them. So you had Daikin, Amana, Goodman, and they passed Carrier as being the number one manufacturer in the United States. I wonder if that, if maybe Carrier passed them back, for a year or two. I don't know, but they are definitely, I like them. So for a number of reasons. So Carl says, might have an issue with crushing the buried piping. That's true. They would have to, I think he's talking about my cute little invention that I threw out there. Yeah, you'd have to do it. They'd have to figure out all the all the ins and outs, I'm sure, to be able to do that. So Gary says the MHK is supposed to override the internal sensors. Yeah, I I would guess that it again. I bet it works just like the remote control does. It's just like those other that brand. What's that other brand? Let's see. I think it's pronounced. I know it's how it's spelled. It's Celio, CEL. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it, but these thermostats right here, I have not actually laid hands on one of these either, because we've always done the Honeywell D6s. In fact, to this day, even though they were discontinued, I think I still have a new one on the shelf in our shop. But this is the Cielo Breeze, and it's very similar to the D6 that Honeywell used to make, and it connects to the mini splits, just like the remote does. That's the thing. It has to see the unit like the remote control does. When you point the remote control at the unit, these units essentially do the same thing, but they operate obviously more like a thermostat, and they have the Wi-Fi technology and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's how the MHK is, or if it's something that you said it's wireless, so I would guess that it is. Hey Arch, he says, hello from Arizona. Ream 3.5 ton 14 SEER versus day and night 3.5 ton SEER 13.4 SEER package unit for a rooftop installation. You guys out in Arizona and your rooftop stuff. Our 20-year-old Tempstar RTU has a refrigerant leak. So I will say this. So you said that your Tempstar is 20 years old. Day and night is the same brand. They're both ICP products. So if you liked your day and night, Tempstar is the same brand. Ream is not the same, obviously. And I would, if I was talking to my own family, I would tell you, don't focus on the brand, focus on the contractor. Go with the better contractor and then the brand that they recommend. I will say that if it's the same contractor and they're offering you both of these brands, then honestly, I would maybe get another opinion. I personally have always said this. I don't care what the brand is. So if you've got a contractor that just loves Carrier, or they love Daikin, or they love Train, whatever the brand is, it's my opinion that you want someone. Now I think most heating and air guys would agree that the brand matters less than the installer or the installation. It needs to be installed right. It needs to be installed by someone good, etc. But I think that even if you're buying a system and you're about to spend all this money, you want to go with somebody that does have a preference. In my opinion, you want to have that guy that says, I love this brand. It's the one that I think is best. I think they're best for these reasons. And then, go with that. And that's what I usually tell folks. Hopefully that makes sense. Randy says, I have a question about my Miller package unit in my mobile home. The other day, I had hosed off the outside condenser coil, and the next day, I saw water in the return duct. Would that have caused it? It's possible. If you were spraying water in there and something's not sealed correctly, a package unit, it is possible for water to get into the area where, what I would call the air handler, where the fan motor and all of that is, and pull that water in. I saw water in the return duct. I would say though, I think that it's unlikely. So if you have water in the return duct, there might be another reason for that. So is it possible? Yes. But is it likely? I would say no. Carl said, did I read Mitsubishi is selling off their HVAC business? I have not heard that. But maybe I suppose it's possible with all the partnerships they have with Train, maybe they are going to, make that leap and sell it off. Who knows? Ryan says, I see that Amana is now offering their own Daikin fit type system called the S series. Yeah, we saw that at AHR. It's pretty impressive. Have you seen it? Yes, I have, but it only comes with a 10-year warranty. I guess the Daikin fit still wins in that regard. Yeah, I have not actually worked on the S series unit. It does have the same look as the fit. The thermostat is different though. So if you have a company that is, maybe you're comparing the two, the products itself are going to be very similar, but maybe have each of them show you the thermostats. Maybe you'll make a decision just based on that. And then obviously you pointed out that the warranties are different. I did not know that I know Amana has some products where they have lifetime warranties on certain things. So maybe the S series, let's see. I'm just looking at their warranty stuff. So it looks like, yeah, so it does have that lifetime unit replacement warranty for their compressor. And then you're right, it's a 10-year warranty for the parts. It's a little different, and that might play a role in your decision making too. So the fit comes with the 12-year parts warranty and the 12-year unit replacement. So you're going to get a little bit shorter of a warranty on that regard. But if, say, the compressor were to fail, then looks like you're going to have that lifetime unit replacement warranty. So tomato, right? You're going to go with which one you think, makes more sense for you, I guess. So let's see. Jesse says, how critical is a senior tech in a young installer's rise? Was having a rough day today on a job, but thankfully a senior tech not too far dropped by on the way to his next call to give me a hand. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I think it's probably a topic that we could spend the entire night talking about, right? I could tell you that some of the guys that I was around coming up through this trade, I wouldn't be where I am without them. And sometimes I remember a guy telling me, even if you think you already know the answer to something, go ahead and ask questions and see, maybe you do know the answer, but maybe there's another way to look at it. Or maybe you would have found the solution to that issue, but they maybe can impart some wisdom to help you figure out that solution better, So how critical is it? I think it's priceless. I think it's one of the things that is a dying, I don't want to say a dying breed, but back when this country first started, the trades and the people that had skills, blacksmiths for example, they would have apprenticeships, and a lot of these apprentices would learn this trade, and it took them a few years to learn it, or however long the apprenticeships lasted, but they were held in such a higher regard. Whereas today, the economy and things like that, and where you can make more money in some cases doing other things, so becoming an apprentice is not what it used to be. It's not. So the point is, I guess, if you have you're saying senior tech, I would even use the verbiage of a mentor, having a mentor help you learn this trade and get by quicker, and maybe just picking up a few nuggets here and there. That's what's so great about YouTube, is there are guys on YouTube that have forgotten more than I'll ever learn, and they'll impart that wisdom to you. Arch says, we have one more HVAC coming tomorrow to give us an estimate on a train heat pump to see if we qualify for a rebate from the utility company. Nice. Let us know how that goes next week. Danny says, what do you think about Comfort Maker AC systems? Appreciate any insight you might have. Comfort Maker, I believe, is another ICP brand. Give me just a second. So many of them that sometimes because I think there's a Comfort Maker, and then there's another one that Nordine. Yeah. So Comfort Maker is an ICP brand. Um, I think Nordine makes a brand that's similar to that name. I can't remember. So sometimes I always like to verify, make sure I'm giving out the right information. So anyway, ICP has a decent reputation in our industry. And as I said before, just, find a good contractor and go with the brand they recommend. Bob says most mobile homes have an air return grills on the floor. It's possible the duct has some opening which allowed water in. It is possible. Most of the mobile homes in our area are split systems. So they'll have an electric furnace. I can only think of one, maybe two, but one off the top of my head of our own customers that have a mobile home with a package unit. So Emery says, I had a contractor say I need to replace my system due to refrigerant overcharge. Is that a good reason? I mean, I would get a second opinion, I would think. If it's overcharged, why couldn't they reclaim some of that refrigerant and get it charged correctly? That's interesting. Now if they're saying that it's damaged something because of that, then maybe it is time to replace it. If the damage is done and the repair cost is higher than you are willing to put into an older system, then maybe it's time to make the leap. But just because the system is overcharged does not necessarily mean it's time to replace that system. TJ says, does anyone know if it's okay to always have a thermostat set at the overcool setting? The unit seems to run longer and maintain a lower humidity level while on that setting. Overcool setting. I don't know if you're talking about a mini split. Maybe you can give us a little more context. Overcool. So according to Cincy, so I don't know if this is maybe it's something that's just on your specific thermostat, but oh no, the Ecobee has it too. It says the Overcool Max. But it says this feature allows anyone with a cooling system to achieve dehumidification. By setting this feature, you allow the thermostat to cool past your set point by up to 3 degrees during an active cooling cycle to achieve the dehumidification percent you desire. So that's interesting. So essentially it sounds like, you'll set your temperature, and if it hasn't reached the humidity setting that you have it, then it will allow the system to continue to cool to attempt to reach that humidity setting. So that's interesting. Hey, Brian, good to see you. Greg says, you mentioned TempStar. Do you think TempStar is a good brand? I do understand you say the contractor is more important. Yeah, TempStar, again, is another ICP brand, and ICP does have a decent reputation. Even before they were Carrier, they had a decent reputation in our industry. I don't think they've ever been known as being like a premium brand, and I don't know that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, but they're definitely higher than builder grade. At least most guys in our industry would say that. Emery says, I had a contractor say I need to replace my system due to a refrigerant. Oh yeah, we already went through that question. Randy said, Bob, that's what I'm thinking too, because we had the return duct changed last year, so maybe it wasn't sealed up right. Oh, gotcha. The plot thickens. But we've had a lot of rain too, so that might also have caused it. Yeah, I mean, if you have water in there, regardless of what caused it, something is wrong. It shouldn't do that. Let's put it that way. So if you're getting water in there for one reason or another, you may want to have a pro take a look at that. Arch says, one HVAC company insists that he needs to make a hole in our roof for a new return air vent for a new heat pump to work properly. Our current return air is through the wall studs and sheetrock. Some walls are not thick enough for the returns. So I have seen that a lot in new construction where they'll use the wall cavity, and if you do run your ductulator on it, there's no way you're getting the proper amount of airflow through there. So that company may be correct. Have them show you. If they know what they're talking about, they'll actually show you on the duculator why they're saying what they're saying. Randy says, I remember years ago it would fill completely with water to the point and would saturate the air filter with water, and we had to shop vac the water out monthly, and lately it hasn't happened as often. Interesting. Ryan says, are the products available on HVAC wholesale sites different from what contractors buy from the distributors? I see that some Daikin mini splits are available for the general public to purchase. Are the products available on HVAC wholesale sites different? I would say yes and no. So it depends on what you're getting, I guess. But I think that, yes, there are products that you can buy on there and they're the exact same that we're going to get. They've just got some contractor or distributor that's offering them on those websites. But it doesn't mean you can buy all the products. So in other words, if you might not be able to get the VRV Life on there necessarily. Sorry to be grunting in y'all's ears, but just had a little something in my throat there. Brian says, I've trained several technicians that have moved on. Good for you, Brian. I think that's part of it, right? I mean, part of the legacy, part of, if you can leave something, even if they don't stay with the same company, but they move on to, greener pastures, imparting that wisdom. I feel like, it's part of, not to get religious, but it's the part of that sowing and reaping thing. You reap what you sow. Arch says, in 10 years, the defrost board, condenser fan motor, 2 capacitors, 2 blower motors, 2 blower motors again, and 1 relay were replaced in our TempStar package unit. So you've been through some stuff there. I think the one that really sticks out to me is it sounds like you've had a couple blower motors there. So I would definitely consider the sizing of the ductwork. Maybe, that system's being overworked. Fan motors go bad. Let's be clear. But to have 2, in the same system go bad within a few years apart, you got the one that was in there when it was installed, right? And then you got these 2 new ones. So over a span of 10 years, do the math, it sounds like they're lasting about 3 years, and they should definitely last longer than that. Nordyne makes air temp. That is true. TJ says Southeast Texas, and it's a Cincy. Emery says Heil is another ICP brand. Very true. And Gary says, Emery, my home was built in 1979 and still has a perfectly operating Heil gas furnace, original to the home, quietest blower, and gas hog, 150,000 BTU burner, a powerhouse. Nice. Jesse says, hey, Brian, do you keep in touch with some of those techs? I'll be curious to answer that. The answer to that question too. I can't think. I am best friends with the first guy I ever learned from. He was actually an electrician, and I was his helper for almost 5 years. And he was in my wedding, and we still keep in touch to this day. But other than him, I don't think I keep in touch with anyone else. So Emery says, no way, we had a Heil unit which we replaced with a Linux. Ooh, shots fired. Everybody's got their preferences. It's funny, I'll go to calls and we'll have somebody say, hey, do you install this brand? Because we had it for so many years and we love it. And then I'll go to another call, and the very next customer is like, hey, I don't want the brand that first customer was talking about. They'll say, I don't want that brand because of all these issues we've had from it. So, and sometimes it's just been comical because I'm like, it's the same brand. I should put these two people in a room and they can duke it out over these brands. So anyway, so yeah, I know one of you commented on the my invention, but just I think it was just one of you. So I maybe I'll throw out another one in just a moment. Let's see. Let me ask you guys a question. Do any of you folks on this chat have a home warranty company, and has it been good for you? Do you like it? I just had a person email me this week, and they saw the video I did on home warranties, and they want to tell me their story basically, and we may do a video on it. I'm not sure yet. It depends on what their story is about. But let's see. It says, well, I'll just read it to you. So this guy's name is Christian. Hopefully he's okay with me sharing this on our show. By the way, don't reach out to YouTubers unless you want them to talk about their experience with you on YouTube. I've had a few people do that. I had one person even threaten to sue me because I was talking about something they had told me. I never said their name, but they threatened to sue me for talking about their personal issue on a YouTube video. So anyway, people are funny. So Christian says, I came across your YouTube channel this week for contractors' viewpoints on home warranty perspective, and you covering news stories of them denying customers' claims this week. Thank you for your excellent and informative videos, as I have enjoyed your channel. A little about my situation. In April of 2022, I started experiencing HVAC issues where it couldn't cool my house in Northern Virginia in the DC metro area. While it was bearable in springtime to wait for a solution, by summer it was reaching 90 degrees in my house. My home warranty was with, and I'm not going to say the company's name, at least not right now, and it was nothing short of a nightmare. 4 contractors were assigned. Most never showed on day of initial appointment window, and 7+ weeks of diagnostics throughout early July with no pathway forward eventually turned into a lawsuit filed by me against this company. According to the Better Business Bureau response submitted by someone else, this company is the parent company of this other company. Got it. Eventual repairs and replaced by a professional were hired by my out-of-pocket for a 16-plus-year-old unit, R22 Freon, and the company and the warranty company offering only about $1,000 in mediation before the lawsuit was filed. I found another individual who is a father in the DC area, and he blogged about his nightmares with this company. And I'm not going to put that up yet, but maybe we'll share this blog with you guys at some point. I just want to go through everything before I, endorse anything, I guess. I plan to post part 2 and 3 on the blog after the appeals time frame closes after Memorial Day, as I finally had my day in court last week and won mostly pro se until I retained an attorney for a day of trial prep. Not sure if you would want to do an interview with my experience of a Virginia resident with these home warranty issues. But at a minimum, I wanted to write and say thank you for your excellent content and giving you a quality contractor's perspective. Well, regards, Christian. So yeah, I don't know if Christian will even see this video, but pretty crazy. Sounds like they had to go to court to get what they, wanted, and that's just crazy. So home warranty companies, I used to do work for them when I first started Griffin Air. When you start out, you're starving, you'll eat anything. I kind of, I feel, and I had heard of some other contractors saying they had good luck with some of these warranty companies, but I I I I had a couple good companies we were working with, and then as it seemed like they grew and they were bought out by other companies, I think the main thing for me was when the home warranty company is not involved and I can talk directly to the homeowner and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. We've got options. We can go this route or that route. Sometimes it might make sense to go ahead and replace the system before you put a bunch of money into an old system or whatever the scenario is. And what I started finding with a lot of home warranty companies is the corners they would make us cut. They would, instead of replacing the system, for example, they may say, oh, we'll go ahead and put a band-aid on that system, not realizing there are some systems, band-aiding it may not even be a realistic expectation, so I don't know. It's just been it was a long road, and we finally stepped away from it. We at Griffin Air will not work for warranty companies anymore. We do have a few customers that have warranty companies, and they've figured out a way to basically the warranty company reimburses them. So they still do business with us directly. They won't use anyone else, which is great, but they still have a home warranty company, and I guess they have to take it up with them on, the compensation and the reimbursement. Gary says, well, Emery, as you may have seen me mention, not now went with the mini splits, no more gas, but only when it gets below the Mitsubishi rating, then have to kick it on. Ryan says, what brands do you see the most on your service calls in your area? Well, I don't know if we have one that's more than the rest or anything like that. We have in our area a really big Carrier dealer, and they were the biggest, and they're not a huge company, but for our area, they were decent, and they were the one for many years, so we lay our hands on probably more Carriers than a lot of other brands, I guess, but I think that's the only reason. It's not because Carrier has more breakdowns necessarily. They all have their issues. Gary says, Josh, I get home warranty offers, but have not gone for it. Let me know if you do. Brian says home warranties are the devil. And Brian says AHS. I can tell you this email was not about AHS. So I'll probably share, more information about that customer's experience, possibly at later point. Gil says, have a good night, everyone. Have a good night, Gil. Let's see. TJ says, Ryan, is your name highlighted in this message? Arch says, this person who has been servicing our heat pump for the last few years only has a business license, but not a contractor license. If he installs our heat pump, will we qualify for factory warranty? You're going to have to call the factory on that. Some states don't require contractors licenses, but it's getting fewer and fewer company or states that are that way. Most states, they require it to be doing that kind of work. And because of that, the manufacturers are going to require it as well to honor warranties and so on. Ryan says, I don't have a home warranty. Too many bad stories. I do have a family that likes them, but had bad claims sometimes and good ones. So it's a wash for them. I rather have money set aside for repairs. Yeah, I think here's the thing. I think in theory, home warranty companies would be great to have, right? If they did what they are saying they're going to do. So like if somebody buys a house and they buy a home warranty with that house, the hope and dream and the thing that the realtors and the home warranty companies seem to sell is, oh, it's peace of mind. You're not, if you do have any issues, you're covered. But in reality, what I think it's a false expectation of what they're going to take care of and cover, because you find out the hard way that they're not going to always take care of things. And so I think that's really the long and short of it here. I think in theory they sound great, but then, they don't necessarily operate like they like you hope they would, right? Ryan's TJ says, I'm just curious whether the highlight feature works while using a mobile phone. Arch says, I thought home warranties were a scam, but 2 of our neighbors had their heat pumps covered under warranty. Yeah, that's the crazy thing. I've had the couple times that I have got on my soapbox and shared the experiences that I've had and talked to people like this person that emailed me. I've had a few folks say, "Hey, I had a great experience. They took care of me. They bought me a new system." And every one of those people, I'll usually tell them, well, you're the minority and good for you. Maybe you opted and bought the better plan or something, because, that is not always the case. I've heard a lot of horror stories. In fact, I was on a podcast years ago, for a company that, he had an interesting podcast. He did like shows on UFOs and aliens and conspiracy stuff, but then he would turn around and do like an informative show on warning folks of certain scams. And the one that I was on there for was for home warranty companies, and talking about my experience with them. So Jesse says, what brands do you see the most on service techs tool bags? Most on service text tool bags. I'm not sure what you're talking about, Jesse. I'm sorry. Emery says, what can happen if the AC suction line is not insulated? Ultimately, it'll sweat. And if it's not insulated, especially indoors. So if it's, say, running through the attic, it can sweat and then drip onto, the ceiling and things like that. But it also can hurt efficiency. So especially if it is running through a hot attic, you can have issues where, it's should be, it'll affect the ability of that system to cool the home, and, the efficiency of it. It might take longer to cool it down and so on. So, and there might be another reason or two, but that's the main reasons. It's going to sweat if it's not insulated properly. Bob says, Emery, never insulate the suction line dryer. You'll get liquid refrigerant into the compressor and destroy it. Not all systems have liquid or suction line dryers. Most of them have the liquid ones. But, it's a good point. Sheldon says, I have heard that microchannel condensers don't work well in heat pump systems. What are your thoughts? I would agree with that. In fact, a lot of brands, so I don't know, a decade or two ago, a lot of the brands were saying, this is the new thing. You have to use less refrigerant. Microchannel is the way to go. And then a lot of the brands have stopped saying that. The only two that I know of off the top of my head that even offered them in recent years were Nordyne and York. So a lot of the other brands that were starting to offer them got away from them. And I don't even know if they offer them anymore. So I don't install either one of those brands, so I'm not sure. Ryan says, is it better to have the filter dryer installed inside or outside? Is there a general rule that contractors follow when deciding where to install the filter dryer? So this is a debate that a lot of heating and air guys will have. I can tell you that if it's not noted in the instructions where it should go, then a lot of techs will go ahead and install them inside. They are typically painted. And then when that paint starts to, wear off over the years, the filter dryers can actually start to rust, if they're made of steel, and other issues like that. And I've seen some of them start leaking refrigerant because of that. So a lot of guys will locate them inside near the evaporator coil. And that's really the only reason, just to get them out of the elements. Some brands will install them actually in the outdoor unit. So they're literally located in that outdoor unit. And the reason they do that is because it's, they don't want the system being installed and the installer saying, throw that filter dryer aside. They want it to be in there to protect that system, remove that moisture and the particulates, and they go ahead and install it in the outdoor unit. So I don't know that it necessarily has to be installed inside, but I would think that most guys would say, unless the instructions say otherwise, or unless it's already installed in the outdoor unit, I think usually guys would try to locate those on the indoor unit or somewhere near the indoor unit. So anyway, anybody else, if you have any questions, feel free to put those in the comments section and we will try to answer those. I know we've had a few other pros on here. I don't know if they're still on here or not, but we had a few other pros that were on here with us as well. Let's see. While we're here, I'll tell you guys about a few videos I've got coming up. I've got a video. I got a video that just went up today talking about three things you can do to a system if one room is hotter than the others. And the solutions are supposed to help you save money. So these solutions are not necessarily calling a contractor and spending a bunch of money. These solutions are more geared towards trying to save a buck. And so that went live today. Couple other videos we have coming up is we have one that's entitled 3 Mistakes Homeowners Make When They Are purchasing a new heating and air system. And so stay tuned for that. We have another one that is in fact, that might be more than 3. It might be 5 mistakes homeowners make. They make a few mistakes sometimes, right? Let's see. We also have a video coming up talking about these new technologies that power companies are using to be able to monitor and control your heating and air system. And so we're going to be doing a video on that coming up. We also have a video on ventilation coming up and the advantages and reasons you should have it in your home, especially newer homes. And, so that's some of our upcoming videos. I've had a Cincy 2 sitting in our office here that they were nice enough to send me, and we even opened one on one of our live shows, and I still have not gotten around to doing a video on that. So hopefully I get that out soon. Emery says, can you be licensed to be both a service tech and an installer at the same time? In Virginia, I don't think there's a difference. So in Virginia, the verbiage they use is you have helpers, journeymen, and masters. And so a master can be someone that has more experience doing service, more experience installing. They don't ask. As long as you can, you have the knowledge and the experience and can pass the test, that's the verbiage they use. But maybe your state's different. I don't know. So yeah. Ryan says, do air handlers come with coils inside of them? I see sometimes where the coil is separate, and is that only separated for furnace and coil installs? So the first part of your question is yes. So do air handlers come with coils inside of them? Usually yes. Now there are exceptions to that rule. There are modular blowers. I feel like I'm saying that incorrectly because I'm live, right? But there are these units that just have the blower, and then you can install the evaporator coil separately. Of course, furnaces, as you mentioned, the coil is also separate. And then there are units that are like, for one I can think of off the top of my head is, say, an electric furnace. The coil would be separate. Um, and you can actually do different configurations with that. Yeah, that's the only ones I can think of off the top of my head. But I know there's others out there. But more times than not, if you just buy a standard system and you buy a standard air handler, the coil is going to be inside of it. Arch says, do you think the wire mesh is enough to protect the evaporator, to protect the evaporative coil like in budget ICP brands, or is a louver much better? We get hail a few times a year, especially during the monsoon. So I think so. First of all, I think you're talking about the condenser coil, not the evaporator coil. So we're talking about the coil that's outside that can be affected by weather and so on. And you mentioned ICP. I know Carrier, Payne, a lot of those other Carrier brands, and not just Carrier. There are a few brands that make these units that the coil is almost exposed to the elements. For example, you could say, take a BB gun and shoot that coil because there's nothing protecting it. And it's my opinion that, and it's their opinion too, that is a lower quality because they only do it on their builder grade stuff, right? They'll have this wire, like almost like a wire grill kind of look that, the holes will be like that big between the wires. And there's just really nothing protecting the coil. Whereas as you go up, say, to a Carrier Infinity model, they're going to have what you're describing as the louvers, where the coil is protected. Hail is one example. Kids playing baseball outside is another. And just things like that could hit that coil. The louver example that you're using would be, in my opinion, better. Let's see. Wonder if I can pull up examples. Bear with me, guys. Of course, I'm not going to be able to find one. All the ones I'm seeing pop up just by Googling it are the ones that have the louvers on it. Yeah, I mean, like, here's another one. So if you guys see this is actually a brand that I'm not going to say their name because they're horrible. But they've got a unit that looks like it's actually made by Medea here. But there's one where the coil's kind of exposed and that weather could get to. But, like you say, this is more of what you're describing, the louver style, where the coil's, protected a little bit. Obviously, there's still chances that things can get in there, but I'm still having trouble finding one of those. I wonder if I just put ICP heat pump. There we go. Yeah, so like one of these. So where the coil, it's just got these wires that are kind of protecting. Well, not really protecting. It's gonna keep some things, like maybe a baseball. It might protect it a little, but if that baseball is traveling hard enough, that's not going to protect it that well. And so, yeah, I think ultimately most folks would agree that having what you describe as the louvers. So something more like the, well, even that has the coil exposed, but let's go back. So like here's a train where it's got the louvers and it's going to protect it a little better. Even Goodman has the louvers, right? So anyway, So just wanted to show you guys so y'all knew what we were talking about there. All right, let's go back to share this. Okay. Sheldon says, will the heat pump system work well enough without heat strips in your area? Some yes, some no. I would say most no. There are going to be times in here in Virginia that it's going to drop below 30 degrees, 20 degrees, and it's going to need a little help. But these newer inverter systems, like I think the Daikin Fit does it. It'll provide heating down to, I'm wanting to say 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It could be lower than that. In fact, I think it might be lower. It might be 6 degrees. I can't remember off the top of my head. But ultimately, the heat strips are going to come on when they need to, and these inverter systems, are going to come on a whole lot less. They can provide heating at lower temperatures. And it's not just inverters; just heat pumps in general have come a long way. Carrier and ream units have louver covers. Yeah, some carriers don't. Their builder grade stuff still has that old school stuff, or at least it did. Carl says, I had my AC replaced due to hail damage. That's crazy. Carl, did your insurance help with that? Just curious to know. Arch says, that's good to know. It doesn't seem like it would cost that much more to install louver covers, or at least make them an option that can be purchased. Yeah, most brands, you're just going to have to go up to the next unit. It's not like an upgrade to the same unit or anything. And Arch says, do you think Arch, by the way, thank you for all your questions. I think you're kind of keeping us afloat tonight. A lot of folks are just kind of watching and, paying attention, but they're not really asking any questions. So your questions have been great, by the way. Arch says, do you think the easy of servicing and repairing a heat pump should be a consideration when purchasing a new unit? The manufacturer's warranty only covers parts and not labor. Do you think the easy servicing and repairing a heat pump should be considered? I'm not sure exactly what you're saying there, pal. Unless you're talking about an extended labor warranty, and then of course you want to have your system maintained. But I apologize, I'm not understanding the question. Do you think the easy of servicing? Yeah, I don't know. And then Carl says, to the tune of 10K. The carrier branded ones I've seen do, but the ICP base ones don't. Arco Air Day and Night Temp Star. Arch easy of access to the unit. Sean says, why does an AHU with heat strip that uses a double poled 60 amp breaker, how do HVAC guys? I'm not following, guys. How do HVAC guys? Why does an air handler with heat strips that uses a double pole 60 amp breaker? I'm not sure your question, Sean. So you might need to elaborate. We are going to wrap up in just a moment, guys. One thing I like to do before, please don't leave yet. I know it seems like every time I say we're going to wrap up soon, a whole bunch of folks sign out. But I want to do something, and we've been trying to do this a few weeks in a row. Even if you've already shared one before, when we wrap up tonight, can you? I'll just ask if you do know of a good heating and air company in your area, even if you've shared them before. Don't do it yet, but when we get to that point, go ahead and give them a shout out, what city they're in, and what their company name is. You never know. Somebody might see this and you might be doing that great company a favor. And, somebody else might say, oh, I'm in the same city you are or near there, and I, can use that company as well. Sean says, why does it use a 6-gauge wire? So 60 amp double pole breaker is typically, I don't have the code book in front of me, but usually it is rated for 6-gauge AWG. Ryan says, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but I installed my hybrid heat pump water heater and it has been very efficient, uses less than 2 kW a day to heat the water. Ream is the brand I installed. That's crazy, Ryan. I tell you, you guys might get me pulled over to that side of things, because I'd always said when my when my water heater fails, that I will probably look at doing a heat pump water heater, but it's been working, so I hadn't looked at it up to this point. But that, if it's going to save me a ton of money, it's something I probably will look at. Emery says, what's the purpose of aux heat on a heat pump? It's usually the aux heat's going to be your second stage heat. So whether it's your furnace or your electric heat strips. So if it gets super cold and the heat pump can't keep up, that's when your aux heat should kick in. Arch says, this is a great way to find more information before spending a big chunk of money on a new heat pump. A lot of folks, heat pumps or heating and air systems in general, it's the third largest investment they're going to make. If they don't ever purchase an in-ground pool for their house, right? If they don't ever, build a wing onto their house, or, a new room or whatever, if they just live, normal, means life, they're going to purchase a house, they're going to purchase a car, and then they're going to purchase a heating and air system. It's the third largest investment they're going to make typically. So, that's kind of our goal here, is to try to help folks make a good decision. 3000 says, our AC is on its last legs. We want the Daikin fit and got quotes ranging from 10K to 14K. We actually like the least expensive installer the most, and he really seemed to understand and care. That's awesome, man. It's nice when the stars align there. Carl says, where in Arizona are you? 3000 says, is there an equivalent to the Daikin fit we should look into? We talked about earlier in this show, if you do have a good Amana dealer in your area, Amana now has their S series that is equivalent to the Daikin fit. The thermostats are different. They don't have the Daikin 1 or the Daikin 1 ecosystem, but they do have, their own Amana communicating thermostat that you might like better. I don't know. Arch says, I would definitely let you know after we hire them to install our heat pump, and it's been working properly for a few months. Sheldon says, why doesn't the manufacturer warranty the Freon along with the parts? None of them do, buddy. I don't know the answer to that question. I think it's because none of them do. I would guess that if one of them started to, then they would all have to, join that party, right? If you had one brand that was taking care of folks better than the rest, out of nowhere, the rest of them might have to, make that leap as well. So, yeah, let's go ahead and, Bob's already shouted out one. But let's go ahead before we wrap up. If you've got a good heating and air company in your area, go ahead and give them a shout out and what area they are in. And we're going to try to end each show this way, so that way we can continue to honor these companies that are doing things right, and you guys can help, get their name out there. And you never know, somebody in your area might see this and you've been able to help that company out. So Bob says Chris Hill HVAC is a good company in our area. He used to do installs for me years ago. So shout out to Chris Hill. Carl says, is there any news on which refrigerant that is going to dominate the market in the long run? No news yet. I think that it's still the same. I think you've got some manufacturers that are going to go with R32 and some that are going to go with R454B. I thought somebody made a really good point the other day, and they said, why are we not looking at a refrigerant that would literally be a replacement refrigerant for 410A and continue to use the same equipment and just switch refrigerants? If you have a system run out of 410, you just add this refrigerant instead. But I think it all boils down to this GWP thing. And then it probably there's also something to be said for money. Some of the manufacturers have not, at least last I heard, there are a few that still have not even said which one they're going to go with. So we'll see what happens, right? Sean says, do heat pumps take more Freon than a condenser? Do heat pumps use more refrigerant than a straight AC? I think in general, no. I mean, they maybe a little bit more, but in general, they're going to be about the same if you're comparing apples to apples, the same specs and all of that. Maybe a little bit more, but not much. 3000 says our Ream hybrid averages 2.8K a day right now in May. Most power is required in cooler months. Interesting. He's talking about the heat pump water heater, guys. Bob says, Carl, I think the refrigerant makers will keep bringing new refrigerants to the market. It also helps equipment makers. Ryan says competitors to the Daikin fit are Samsung's. So Ryan, I have to disagree with you. So you're throwing out some of these brands and products you're throwing out there are not communicating inverter systems. So they're inverter, but they're not communicating inverter. So they're going to not be the same. They're not going to compete, and they're not going to have the same capabilities. That's just my 2 cents anyway. You may disagree. You may like some of those better. Sean says, what's your opinion on Goodman heat pumps? I did a whole video on that, Sean. You should check it out. And essentially the summary is we think Goodman are great. When we install them, we don't hear back from customers. And I think a lot of folks that talk down on Goodman are usually because Goodman can be pretty much purchased by just about anybody. And so because of that, higher level of access where you have people that don't know what they're doing installing them, and then they have more issues, then they end up blaming the brand, not the installer. And so I think that might be why they have the reputation they do sometimes. Arch says there are a lot of Goodman package units around here. Has Goodman's quality improved since Daikin bought them out? I think in general, yes. Goodman, or Janitrol is what it was called years and years ago. They have improved. They're offering things that they never have before. And, it's just my opinion that they have improved. Square Cross is currently building a DIY tiny home on wheels in Texas. Just purchased a ducted 12K BTU system. I need a longer line set than the 15 feet that comes with it. Nice. Squarecrow says, think I can get away with a 25-foot. Any downsides to going 30 besides the cost? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about minimal lengths. Now, you might have to add a little refrigerant when you go over a certain length, but it's not going to affect the performance of the system typically. Arch says a big box store sent a big outfit to give us a quote. I told them they were too high on price, and they came back and knocked the price down over $4,000. My wife said it was like buying a car. Yeah, that's a concern. I would maybe get some other quotes. If somebody is, trying to upsell you, and then, when you give them a hard time, that all of a sudden the price changes, that would be a concern. So anyway, yeah, so we're going to wrap up in just a moment, guys. But again, if you know any good heating and air companies out there, please share, giving them a shout out, drop their name in the comments section and what area they're located in. I know Bob threw one out just a moment ago. Even if you shared them before, please give them a shout out. I own Griffin Air here in Virginia, and we're not a huge company, but we do offer the best warranties in our area. So that's always been something we've hung our hat on. Sean says, what is considered a bad install, wrong duct size or oversizing? Sean, I also did a whole video series on that exact question. It's literally called Bad Installation Series or something similar to that. And we go through all of the things that could be done wrong by an installation that would cause you issues as time goes on. So Arch says we won't be using them because of that. I don't blame you. So, all right, guys. Well, we're going to wrap up again. If you have any companies you want to share, please shout them out. Good heating and air companies across the country. Would love to, bless those companies that are doing great. And, it always, helps out and for us to know which companies are doing things right out there, right? Ryan says unlimited residential air in North Carolina. So shout out to those guys, unlimited residential. Bob says, we'll see you next week. Keep busy and make some money in the process. Yes, sir. Arch says, ever do any fishing at Bull Run Marina or Lake Brittle or Sandy Lake? I used to live in Virginia many years ago. I don't know of any of those areas. We're about 45 minutes north of Williamsburg. So I don't know of those particular places that you're mentioning. Sean says, I wish you were in my area. I'm going to go check out your videos. Thank you. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. Awesome. We've got a few more folks dropping some names. Jesse says Rescom Heating and AC. So shout out to Rescom. And not sure where you're located, but that's close to Fairfax. Got it. And Mr. Marty says, thanks for your videos. Thank you for your kind words. So yeah, we're going to wrap up. We'll be back next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So find out where what that is in your area if you're outside of the Eastern time zone. And we appreciate you guys supporting us. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. That always helps us. Squarecrow says, thank you for your live stream. Appreciate the community outreach and what your channel is about. Thanks, Squarecrow. Appreciate your kind words. Yeah, so we'll end it with that. Y'all have a great week. Make it a great week. And I appreciate y'all tuning in. Take care.